Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys and offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by J.P. Morgan Chase, a partner in financial planning. Looking ahead to retirement, growing your business, or for commercial banking, J.P. Morgan Chase offers advice and solutions tailored to individual needs and client well-being. More information is at jpmorganchase.com. And by Luba Workers Comp, a regional insurance carrier dedicated to providing reliable workers' compensation coverage to employers and workers in 13 states across the Southeast. With personalized service, trusted expertise, and tailored solutions, Luba helps businesses protect what matters most. Discover more at lubawc.com.
From Mansell's on the Boulevard on Corporate Boulevard in Baton Rouge, we're out to lunch with Stephanie Regal, business writer for The Advocate Times-Picayune. It's business, Baton Rouge style.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Regal. Welcome to Out to Lunch. When you're launching your own business, one of the first questions you have to ask is, who is your target market and how are you going to differentiate yourself from the competition? Are you going to try to be all things to all people or go niche? Specialize in a certain area or combine some of your talents and skills to appeal to a particular customer base? Getting it wrong could be the difference between making it and being one of those 50% of small businesses that fails in the first year. With me today to discuss this is Fritz Embaugh, founder and CEO of Plus One Design and Construction, a Baton Rouge firm that figured out nearly 20 years ago what it wanted to be. Plus One provides turnkey services on commercial and residential projects, from architecture and design to planning to construction and project management. Among the firm's varied portfolio are well-known restaurant buildings like Curbside Burgers and French Truck Coffee, to churches, apartment complexes, and renovations to the LSU Hilltop Arboretum. Fritz is a licensed architect and general contractor who started the firm in 2005 after more than a decade working with local architectural and construction companies. Fritz, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for joining us on Out to Lunch.
Thanks for having me.
Joining me and Fritz at the table is Chloe Ike, founder of Chloe Ike Art and Appraisals, a Baton Rouge firm that provides appraisals of fine arts and antiques. Chloe is an artist herself with a specialty in oil painting. She founded the firm in 2023 after graduating from LSU and becoming a member of the International Society of Appraisers. And Chloe, it's such an interesting business niche, and it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for making time today on Out to Lunch.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Fritz, I'm going to start with you. Tell me how a small firm can do everything. It seems like a great idea, but vastly different skill sets to be an architect and a contractor and to manage and like I said, do it all.
Yeah, you mentioned that I figured it out nearly 20 years ago. I'm not going to admit that I did have it figured out. It took us probably a good part of the 20 years to get to where we are, and I think we're still figuring some things out today. When we started, we were kind of born out of some frustrations and what we saw as necessity in the marketplace. Me and my business partner at the time were both architects. That's where our passion was. That's where our education and our background and our training was. And we frankly had a lot of frustration with the type of design and the attention to detail that we were pushing forward in the architecture end of things with a lot of the contractors that we were working with. And so I had just spent the last prior 5 years of my career working with a large industrial kind of design build firm. So I said, hey, let me go get my contractor's license, and we'll take that just equation, that kind of wrench out of the equation altogether, and we will go ahead and kind of approach things from a design build perspective.
Cool.
And so we kind of started with that, and as you can imagine, we recognized that there's a lot more to it than what we thought there was going to be. So
All right. Well, we will follow up with some questions and dig into that a little more. But Chloe, I want to bring you into the conversation because you've sort of married some really complementary but different skills here with being an artist yourself, but also an appraiser now of art. How did you, and especially as a young, relatively recent college graduate, come into that?
Yeah, that is a great question, and I get asked that a lot. So in my last semester of school, a lot of people ask you, what do you do with an art degree? It's the kind of the biggest question there is. And so I had to also, as an artist, think outside of the box, right? And I started researching what kind of careers were fitting for me as an artist that could support me being an artist, but also allow me to continue my education. And at the time, I was working at a gallery that did framing and restorations. And when I was there, I found that a lot of the clients that were bringing us their artwork from their homes, it held a lot of meaning. And that was something that really resonated with me. So I found out that there was a demand for appraisals in the area. There was a lack of appraisers. And people need that kind of service for a lot of different reasons. And I reached out to a few different appraisers in the state and realized it was something I could do. And it was something that I was really interested in, using my art history background. And as an artist, how can I use my art to help other people other than just selling a painting?
That's
And,
fantastic.
yeah.
Wise beyond your years to be thinking of the big picture and how am I going to support myself and not just pursue my passion. But that's great. And I was about to say, how do you find appraisers? Do you just look them up in the Yellow Pages? But of course, we don't have Yellow Pages anymore, more or
Right.
less, right? So did you just Google appraisers in Louisiana?
I did, and that's
Yeah.
when I came across the International Society of Appraisers organization, and on their website, you could look up appraisers that are in the state or near you. And I found that there was only 2 in New Orleans with that organization. So I reached out to them. They've been doing it for over 30 years each, held meetings with the both of them just to, get more, figure out what an appraiser was and how to become one. And I joined the organization and became a member, and within a year, I was qualified to become an appraiser.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, Fritz, I want to learn a little bit more about what you learned along the way in this journey towards becoming, design and build and management and everything else. Especially in Baton Rouge. I mean, this is not a big market and it's tough, right? And they're
Yeah, absolutely. It is tough. We started out in a very niche market, and we recognized there were going to be some challenges in that because we were targeting a very contemporary aesthetic, and primarily in the residential single-family market. When you look at Baton Rouge, there's a lot of great designers, but there weren't, especially 20 years ago, a lot of contemporary or modern designed homes in the area.
Certainly not.
At least not any that had been done that didn't date back to maybe the 60s or the 70s. And so we felt like there was a niche there, but we also recognized that we had to get out of town.
oh, interesting.
And so we quickly, probably within just about a year and a half, 2 years, opened a small office in Dallas, Texas as well also. And we still operate that office there today. And there's a large part of our design work that does come from that market in particular.
And was that just because there would be greater demand in a bigger place for your services
Absolutely.
and style?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've, over the years, migrated away from the residential market. Used to be 95% entrenched into it, and today it's probably the opposite of that, where maybe only 5% of the work we do is residential. We've migrated pretty aggressively, especially the last couple of years, into public municipal type work, and work that is even potentially at the federal level that we're targeting. And a lot of that goes back to as we figured out who we are and what we want to do, what works for us, it starts to tie back in a little bit more to some of our passions and our personal beliefs too.
Interesting. I want to talk to you about procurement because I felt like I understood the world a lot better when I all of a sudden really got a window into the world of public procurement, work a few years ago. But before I ask you about that, be thinking about that because Chloe, I want to understand how an appraiser works and how you learned when you look at somebody's heirloom art, or whether it is
Right.
a very valuable piece of art or just something very sweet and sentimental.
Right. So there's a lot of different reasons for someone to get an appraisal done, whether it's just because they're curious of what the value is or for insurance purposes. A lot of times clients inherit stuff and they want to sell their home or sell what's in the home, their assets. And so typically the appraisal process is me inspecting the work and cataloging all of it, whether it's taking photos, measuring, figuring out if there's any damages to the property. And then the research portion is me, depending on what the appraisal is used for, typically it's me looking at past auctions. or looking at past sales within that appropriate market.
Like comps in the real estate business.
Yes, exactly. And I would look at past comparable sales, and from there kind of figure out what their property would be valued as.
Interesting. And is there like a database that appraisers use?
Yeah, there's quite a few
for,
different
French Impressionist style, or a mid-century modern this, or a 19th century that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different websites, usually through a paywall. They have to be subscribed to access, and that's where I would typically find a lot of those past sales. And it ranges between, if it's a really well-known artist, for example, I had a client in the summer that had a Dali.
Wow.
And
right here in Baton Rouge?
Right here in
Lovely.
Baton Rouge. It was for insurance purposes, and the client inherited it from his mother, and it was in his guest bedroom on the floor for months.
Wow.
And it was amazing. The piece ended up being valued at around $28,000. So that is kind of where I would be able to find their works, whether it's because of the artist or the style, sometimes
Sure.
even the frame of the piece.
Yeah, and I would think a Dali might be worth more than $28,000,
Right. This was
you know?
Yeah, this was a print, so that was kind
Okay.
of where that value came from. But it was also valued based on, I was even able to find where the same gallery that sold that piece. So it's interesting to find a story within a story in appraisals.
Sure. Oh, that's so much fun. Okay, Fritz, you said you like going after public work now, government, municipal, even federal.
Yeah,
and in Louisiana?
We have.
Mostly,
Yeah.
or what?
Yeah, it's part of as we've grown as a firm,
Mm-hmm.
and with the different people that we brought on our team and the experience that comes with that, we've developed a lot more of a passion kind of working with emergency services,
Mm-hmm.
arms of things, so fire departments, police departments, emergency operation type centers. But being a veteran, I've also acquired some designations that allow us to go after some federal work, and we want to work with the VA and things like that, because we have a passion there as well. Also, my history as a veteran, so we're taking the type of work that we do now a little bit more, because we're not as related for the immediate need to get cash in hand to
Sure.
survive, that we can actually be more strategic in where we go and tie
And I
personal
mean,
desires to the work that we're doing too.
How much, artistry or flair over functionality is there when you're doing, an emergency response facility, for lack of a better word?
It just all depends. There's always an opportunity. Every client that we work with, we always find an opportunity where we can bring some benefit to what we offer them, whether it's on the construction side, whether it's on the design side. But it may not show from a visible standpoint something that's artistic, but there may be some thoughtfulness that goes into the planning that comes out of that we offer them that they didn't consider when they go into it. Everybody has an idea of what they think they want when they walk into a project like that with us, and almost all the times we're able to not change their minds, but expand their minds a little bit to show them things that they haven't been thinking about that we can offer them.
You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Stephanie Riegel. I'm talking to Fritz Embaugh of Plus One Design and Construction and Chloe Ike of Chloe Ike Art and Appraisal. We'll continue our conversation after this short break.
Support for Out to Lunch comes from Bougie Bologna Company. Made in Cajun country from 100% naturally smoked pork shoulder, Bougie Bologna is premium deli meat to go. In the meat department at Rouse's Supermarkets or at bougiebologna.com. It's bougie, baby.
You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Stephanie Riegel. I'm talking to Fritz Embaugh of Plus One Design and Construction and Chloe Ike of Chloe Ike Art and Appraisal. Chloe, do you have an opportunity to do your art as well while you're working full-time as an appraiser?
Yes. So as an artist, I sell at markets throughout the state. So New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Lafayette are kind of the hot spots. And while I'm there, I also promote appraisal businesses.
Nice.
And I tell that clients or people that come into the booth that if you have collectibles, it's never too late it's never too early to get an appraisal.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be too late. And I also like to emphasize to people also that it's never too early or too late to start collecting either. So I also sell some antiques that I find and resell them at markets as well. A big project that I did do a couple months ago in October was the Attic Treasures program with the Baton Rouge Library. So kind of going into,
neat.
yeah, so what you were saying about community, I worked with the Baton Rouge Library for Attic Treasures, where we had one day on a Saturday, and I think it was the 23rd annual one that they did. And everyone from Baton Rouge that wanted to participate could bring their attic treasures. And there was me and I want to say maybe about 10 other appraisers there, and we all kind of got to do what I would call an antiques roadshow in Baton
That's
Rouge.
so fun.
Yeah.
So, like in this day and age, when you go to a secondhand store, the Salvation Army, you might see a lovely 12-piece setting of a very lovely antique fine bone china. There's not as much demand among some young people, especially today, for some of the pieces, that 30 or 40 or more years ago were very valuable. Does that impact the value of an antique when you're appraising it?
Yeah. So it's interesting to see what has changed over the last, I'd say, 20 years in value. Something that was in high demand maybe 30, 40 years ago was a china cabinet.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And now they could be so beautiful and handcrafted and maybe hold a lot of sentimental value, like you were saying, but they're maybe only valued at $50 because they're not in high demand anymore. Although I would argue that now they're coming back into
Maybe they're
style.
coming back.
Yeah, no longer maybe displaying your porcelain plate set, and now instead showcasing your record collection or other little knickknacks on those shelves instead. So it changes over the years.
So that all kind of factors in
Right.
to how you price something.
Yeah, sometimes it's now valued no longer on its function, but rather decorative quality,
Sure.
and vice
Interesting.
versa.
Yeah. Fritz, in the works that you go after, especially something federal, is there a lot of partnering with other, say, bigger firms or, say a disadvantaged business or, somebody who specializes in a particular niche and you're part of a team? And does that, like to get in with the right group? I see that all the time on
Yeah.
these deals.
Yeah.
It's sort of so critical and it's so competitive.
It is. We've adopted a very collaborative mindset from day one. Mostly because we recognized 20 years ago we were the new guys in town, and it is a very competitive market. And there were some firms here that have been, entrenched and very well received and did great work for decades. And so for us to come into the market, especially in Baton Rouge, and gain any kind of market share, we just said, look, we don't need 100% of the pie. We just want 5% or 2%. Any percent
Right.
is better than nothing. And so we adopt a lot of great relationships from day one with other architects and contractors around town to have that and adopt that collaborative mindset. I wish I saw a lot more of that in Baton Rouge, but it doesn't exist. But we do see that outside of Baton Rouge significantly. Pretty much when you get into larger markets, that is a very common mindset of bringing the best people to the table to present the best project. And at the federal level, it's no difference than any other project. We are a disadvantaged firm. We're a service-disabled disadvantaged firm. And in certain projects, you're required to have a level of participation for those firms to be part of it. And so that level of collaboration between larger business, small business, and those disadvantaged businesses come together is about finding the best fit.
Sure.
Who can come together to provide the best project and best solution at the end of the day.
Chloe, is there a lot of competition in your world? You said there aren't a lot of local appraisers here. Are you going up against well-established older people, or?
Yeah, I would say so. Well, kind of going back to what you were saying about me being an artist, there's a lot of competition in that department, which is why I decided to become an appraiser, is to find that kind of pocket where maybe there wasn't as much competition to support the other area of my life.
Absolutely.
And as an appraiser, yes, I would say in Louisiana, yes, there are a few, and they are very established, and they're great at what they do. So for me, getting started, I'm one doing it in a city that doesn't have anyone here really doing it. And on top of it, I am trying to expand by doing it in different cities in Louisiana, maybe kind of more establishing my name, which is helpful with being with a larger organization that's
Yeah.
international.
So how do you market yourself?
Yeah, so I market myself through obviously the Baton Rouge Library, having, worked with them, that helps me a great deal. Also having long-standing relationships with different galleries in the area because they also have their own clients that come in asking for appraisers. Having certain ads on social media, that kind of word of mouth marketing. It's very old school style, but I find it to be
Nice.
really helpful.
Yeah. So word of mouth, no paid advertising per se.
A little bit, not as much. I would say that most of my clients do come from good relationships with other people and relationships with galleries in the library, that word of mouth.
How big are y'all's respective companies, Fritz?
Personnel-wise,
Yes.
yeah, we've got 11 employees, including myself,
Okay.
and that's between both groups,
Both groups, meaning
architecture and
architect.
construction side. Yeah.
And is one side more heavily weighted than the other, or do y'all pretty much split it down the middle?
No, the construction side is a beast just because of the sheer kind of volume and demand that side of what we do brings to the table. We could easily produce 7 to 10 times the amount of work on the architecture side with fewer people, or the equivalent of what we do on the construction side.
Sure.
Just a lot more moving pieces and parts on the construction side. So most of our team tends to fall on that side of things. But we have what I call a cross-discipline type mindset because I think it's beneficial. So like our superintendents oftentimes get involved in the kind of planning and development of the architecture side of what we do on the front end of stuff, and then even as we're doing site walks during the construction side. And then the architecture side, a lot of times our architects get involved on the project management end of it. And so we look at it that way because we think it makes better architects and contractors out of both of our guys and our team members. So.
Nice. Chloe, do you work alone, or do you have an assistant?
I am fully independent as an appraiser, but if I do need help on an appraiser or appraisal service, a certain kind of project, say it's out of my reach, something that maybe I'm not as familiar with. The amazing thing about being a part of the International Society of Appraisers is that I'm able to contact other appraisers that maybe that is their specialty and have them help.
Was it difficult to get that certification? Is it a very rigorous training program? Did it take like months or weeks or year?
It took me, I would say, about 7 months, and that was doing a couple different courses. And I wouldn't say I was completely certified. That's kind of a no-no word almost. But no, you're totally good. It's the word I would use is qualified.
I see.
And like I said, it took me about 7 months, and it was a couple different courses. And that's really just to make sure that I am up to date with the writing standards of appraisal reports, especially if I'm doing ones for insurance reasons, because they'll go with the IRS, and you have to make sure that everything is in line.
But they're like a lot. These are laws that we're talking about.
It's a code of ethics. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
That's great. And was it difficult, or at the end do you take a test, or it's?
Yeah. So I will say that having an art history background definitely helped, because I was already at that point used to writing a lot and having to do a lot of different reports. The kind of analogy that I give people when they're wanting to know about what an appraisal report is that I compare it to a lab report almost, but about art and antiques.
Nice.
So there's a certain kind of lineup for it. And the hardest part for me really was figuring it out how to have it as a sustainable business more than being able to write an appraisal.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I guess that's always the challenge, right? I mean, did you have to take out a small business loan, or did anybody mentor you through that process?
Yeah. As I mentioned, I knew the two appraisers that are in New Orleans that have been doing it for a very long time. There's more, but the two that I'm familiar with. And they were the ones who kind of helped guide me and mentor me on how I can do it all on my own. I didn't have to take out a loan because there wasn't much I didn't have to pay a tuition almost for it.
Great.
Yeah.
And Fritz, running the business side of a firm that does design and construction, so you're not only dealing with architectural know-how and construction know-how, but business know-how. How did you get up to speed on that, or did you bring in a partner who was more of the guy that does the books and the...
A lot of trial and error and a lot of mistakes. It's probably the best experiences that I've gotten out of the last 20 years are those that I've made some screw-ups along the way.
Yeah.
There's a lot to running both an architecture and a construction company, especially when you do a lot of work outside of Baton Rouge. Every municipal district in Louisiana, and sometimes there are multiples within individual parishes, all have their own rules and guidelines that you have to follow. They all follow a common code, but they apply those in some ways differently in terms of how the permit process, the inspection process works.
Yeah.
And then when you get outside of Louisiana, every state is different. Tax structures are different from city to city, state to state. Codes vary from state to state. And then even the laws of those individual states, which has been a bit of a passion of mine on the architectural side in recent years, how our architectural law has been practiced and how it's applied, and how we as architects are exposed to things that could help us protect the public or endanger the public, let's say. But they're different. I mean, it really is one of those things where, to an extent, it doesn't allow me to practice architecture or construction as much as because I'm having to practice these other things.
Focus on all that.
Yeah, and so, which is why we have a few more employees than just me.
And then I guess that keeps you young too, and keeps you learning new things all the time. There's that.
It does. It keeps me kind of constantly staying in touch, which is why I serve also on some of the organizations I'm part of. Actually it's 2023, I was the state president for the American Institute of Architects chapter. And then I'm currently also serving on the state and local home builder association boards too.
Fantastic. And that's great networking opportunities.
Yeah,
no
just connecting in with those folks is helpful to that extent.
And Chloe, last question. You are interested in expanding beyond Baton Rouge?
Yes. So, as I mentioned before, there's not that many in the whole state of Louisiana, but there's still a demand for the service because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of reasons to have an appraisal done. And my goal is, into the next few years, be able to do appraisals all over the state, potentially.
Well, Chloe Ike and Fritz Embaugh, you both are providing such valuable and interesting services to people here in Baton Rouge and beyond. It's been great having you on the show today and hearing your stories. Good luck with your continued success, and thanks for joining me today on Out to Lunch.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
My guests today on Out to Lunch have been Chloe Ike of Chloe Ike Art and Appraisal and Fritz Embaugh of Plus One Design and Construction. We edited the show to fit into our time slot here on WRKF. You can hear our unedited conversation and find out more about Plus One Design and Construction and Chloe Ike Art and Appraisal on the Out to Lunch Baton Rouge podcast. You can find and subscribe to the Out to Lunch Baton Rouge podcast on your podcast app and on our website. It's batonrouge.la. If you want to know what we all look like, you can find photos from this show on itsbatonrouge.la and on our Out to Lunch Baton Rouge social media. These photos were taken by Ian Lido and Miranda Alvarez. You can find more of Ian's and Mirando's photos at albalidomedia.com and at @albalidomedia on all socials. Out to Lunch is a production of I&O Broadcasting for itsbatonrouge.la and WRKF 89.3 FM. The producer of our show is Grant Morris. Our technical producer is Eric Merle. Our associate producers are Peter Raschuti and Ann Edelman. And today's show was engineered by J.T. O'Neill. I'm Stephanie Riegel. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to meeting you around the table at Mansour's again next week for more business Baton Rouge style on Out to Lunch.
Out to Lunch Baton Rouge is recorded live over lunch at Mansour's on the Boulevard in Baton Rouge. Mansour's is open for lunch daily 11 to 2, for dinner nightly, and for brunch on Saturdays and Sundays. Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys and offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by J.P. Morgan Chase, a partner in financial planning, looking ahead to retirement, growing your business, or for commercial banking, J.P. Morgan Chase offers advice and solutions tailored to individual needs and client well-being. More information is at jpmorganchase.com. And by Luba Workers' Comp, a regional insurance carrier dedicated to providing reliable workers' compensation coverage to employers and workers in 13 states across the Southeast. With personalized service, trusted expertise, and tailored solutions, Luba helps businesses protect what matters most. Discover more at lubawc.com. Mitchell Foreman wrote and performs all the music on Out to Lunch. You can hear Mitchell's music anywhere great jazz is sold or streamed, and at mitchellforeman.com.